We're live. All right, we're recording here. Anybody see the Jason Sudeikis SNL that just came through? Hmm. I should rephrase that. I saw clips. Staying up that late is absurd to me. But at the same time, yeah, like 15-year-old self could handle that. I can't do that now. So, all right, you guys. Feel like we should get started?
Speaking of him, Ted Lasso, it's awesome for anyone who hasn't seen it.
Right. If you haven't seen Ted Lasso, you really are. For those of you watching the recording right now, we're just talking about TV shows, but we'll get to the content in a minute. All right, y'all. Welcome. Week 4. Oh my gosh. So we have the tried and true, and then Eddie's in the back here, like showing up out of nowhere, which is great. So thank you for being here. I appreciate you guys all swinging on in person. It's gloomy. It's cold. It's rainy. I don't know. I feel like most of the Zoomers are probably sleeping right now. So with that said, let's get into it today because we're talking about fitness. And the fun thing about fitness is that there's so many preconceived notions. There's so many assumptions. There's so many things we quote know, welcome, that are common knowledge in quotes here, that fitness is a thing where eyes can really glaze over. We can really be disinterested in the topic because we've heard so much of it. And if you have Instagram, you've probably seen plenty of fitness, whether you care about it or not. Now, the thing is, even if you're exercise averse, even if you're someone who's like, I don't really like that, I'm not a fitness person, there is hope for you. There is some hope, at least, because we're going to talk about how you can reframe fitness to make it actually work for you today. Because in case you haven't noticed in these past few if you are trying to fit yourself into someone else's mode, someone else's program, someone else's model, then you're going to miss because it's not made for you. Now, with that said, I love to review, and it feels kind of quiet and relaxed in the room. So I'm just going to ask you guys to give me some thoughts here. What do you remember from last time, either from anything I said or anything Zach said, or even the nugget that Mike dropped at one point about taxes? It's great. They never go away. Taxes never go away. That seems to be the case. Yeah. So far so good. Yeah. Where's Zach? Zach, where are you? Zach? Seriously, he's not even on Zoom. He's definitely not sleeping. He's been up for 5 hours. Zach's gonna be here next week. He's here weeks 1, 3, 5, and 6.
Oh, I thought you guys came.
Yeah, I know. I see, Zach. I'm here every time. Where are you? Where are you, Zach? All right, virtual call outs. Yeah. Any other things I remember from previously? Anything that you wrote down? Anything that resonated with you? Mm-hmm.
That I've shared with several people.
Oh, you shared some? Oh my gosh. Yeah.
And I'm paraphrasing, so.
Yeah, paraphrase away.
Your words were, but just like thinking about fitness in the sense of not like for me losing weight, I can't program something like your body to work.
Yes. Absolutely. We're going to talk about all about that today. So something that resonated. Can your body do the things you want it to be able to do? And it sounds kind of basic in a way, but that's really what it is, right? I don't want my body to do stuff that someone else wants. I don't really care about being like a high-level swimmer. I just want to be able to like not be not drown and I want to be like slightly better than my friend who's also not that good at swimming. It's like I don't need to be amazing, but to someone else they really care, right? They really care about that. Not drowning is a good baseline though. So in the end, that's absolutely what it's about. Fitness and we're a lot today is about making it something that really resonates with you. Because if it doesn't resonate with you, you're not going to do it. You all have enough stuff on your plate, enough things that are interesting, compelling, or distracting to take your attention and focus, that if something's not really grabbing you and saying like, hey, let's lock into this thing, I mean, why bother? Any other things that resonated?
I wrote down systems are an intentional way of doing something to save time and energy. Impact.
I know that's a long definition, but yeah, systems are an intentional way of doing something to save time or energy and increase impact. Get more and spend less, right? Get more and spend less for the willpower spend. Hey, Andy's in the study. Okay, Andy is the one Zoomer right now. This is great. So let's see. From there, Welcome, welcome. We have a large in person. I wouldn't have expected this on a gloomy day. This is great. Does anyone recall the tax thing? Because that one really stuck with me, and Mikey can't say it. So does anyone else remember the whole taxes? Did anyone go and calculate their estimated taxes just for fun like I did? Because I'm just that fun. Yeah, basically every preceding tax bracket, you pay like that section of it. Whereas a lot of people are like, well, I'm in the, if you're in the 22.4, then you're like, well, I guess, or I mean, you're in the 24 bracket, then you're just like, well, that's what I pay on everything. And that's just not necessarily the case. And of course, it's more complex. All right, so let's get into it a little bit today because we've got some reviews. Nice job, Shelly. Systems are an intentional way of doing something to save time or energy and increase impact. That was one of our biggest things, and that is going to pervade our conversation this entire time. Now, we had a thing where, because we were talking about the general and tweak. If you're going to build a system, I mean, honestly, I'm a huge fan of checklists. If the checklist is correct and it guides you to do the things you need to do, all you have to do is follow the checklist. So in this case, the anchor is just, where am I going to put this in my life? When is it going to happen? When am I going to try to do the system? What will spark me? What is it anchored to? Some kind of reminder to spark you to do it. Again, I say post-it note on your cat, something that you wrote down on your arm. In high school, I used to write on the back of my hand, and then my hand was stained all the time. It was stained nonstop. And then tweak it. Observe what's working, what's not, and don't stick with something that's not working, right? Change it, make it better. We also talked about a bunch of different perks of systems, but the gist is when you have a system, if you take a systems approach, it might be a little slower to build in terms of progress relative to how much effort you're putting in, but then it starts to accelerate. We see much faster growth and sustainability compared to going with the Nike model, which is where you are just plowing ahead and trying to have it be a force of will. Just thinking, I've got to just get it done today. It's okay to say at the start, but if you need to just do it to build a system, that's great. If you need to just do it, it's not usually going to last. So with that said, systems, we tend to see that it gets a lot easier to maintain them long term, but there are some trade-offs. And those things are, for example, that upfront investment of time and energy, that upfront investment of willpower. Usually things that matter to you are significant. If it's significant, it's going to take a while. If it's going to take a while, that means we're going to have an intentional process where we are okay with not necessarily seeing the return today, which is hard. From there's an initial uncertainty about what your system actually needs. Unless you have done this before, unless you are an expert at it, unless you are a professional where you build these types of systems, whatever you're looking at for a living or for fun, you're not going to know everything you're going to need. Something is going to be uncertain. And you're going to figure that out as you go. So you just got to be ready for that. And that means you get to iterate and make it better, which is a good thing, actually, because if you basically only got one shot to get something right, which sometimes we do, but usually we don't. If you have only one shot to get something right, you're not always going to love the result. But if you get second, third, fourth, fifth, eighth chances with this, which is what a system is all about, you can just make it really, really good. I love those frames, by the way. Very, all right, everybody look. Everybody, I'm just kidding. Okay, moving on. Super cheap on Zenny. I don't know about Zenny. Okay, we're all learning things today. All right. Now, from there, we talk about logistics. So if you got this checklist, why, what, how, when, where, who? I know, it's just straight out of elementary school. What are the questions you ask? Honestly, if you can at least think about and address each of these things for your system, whatever you're trying to do, whether you're trying to save yourself some time, whether you're trying to have some more impact, hit on logistics, because that is going to allow you to really have everything fleshed out. Because if one of these is not addressed, it may not be a big deal. It really might not. But it also is usually going to matter and is going to impact you. Again, if you're someone who needs social support, we're in the who category. If you need social support to get this thing done with your system and you don't have social support, that's kind of an issue. And that can actually stop most people. Fun fact in fitness, social support, even silent social support, people knowing what you're up to, is one of the biggest determinants of actually following through over time. All right. Oh yeah, so silent social support. Sometimes we just need people to know what we're doing, right? You just got to tell your friend, tell your partner, tell your relative, somebody who knows what's going on. Even that sense of someone knowing about it can help us to feel supported. Active support's even better, where that person maybe does stuff with you or is like, hey, how's it going? Checks in on you, that kind of thing. But overall, we find that social support is one of the biggest determinants of someone actually going with it. Now, you don't need a cheerleading squad. Every time you wake up, you take the covers off and everyone's like, let's do this, Beth! That's not necessarily how it needs to start. But in the end, if you have this just impression that you're supported, you're much more successful. Similarly, right now we have this whole time where maybe you've heard about during the pandemic and during lockdown, people are talking about languishing in this kind of feeling of stuckness that a lot of people have been dealing with, the energy flow. Maybe in the world of real estate, it's not been because it's been so high energy and chaotic over the warm season. But either way, languishing has really happened where people feel stuck, and they often have found lots of people are feeling very socially disconnected during this time. Even when we have access to virtual platforms, we can feel socially disconnected. But what's weird is you don't even need to be that connected to feel connected. You don't need a massive friend circle or social group. It's been found that some people who just have like a pen pal can feel incredibly connected, and that's all they need. It's just very individual. So you got to figure out what your need is. Speaking of you guys, let's talk about fitness. Let's talk. So what do you think fitness is? Like when you think fitness, if I say fitness, what pops to your head? Lifestyle. Coffee drinking, I assume. Yes, lifestyle. I'm sure it is a way of life. Tell me more about lifestyle, Eddie. When you think lifestyle, like, yeah, just tell me a little more about it.
So I have a plant-based lifestyle.
Oh yeah. Okay.
So, kind of like the way you approach life for me,
Mm-hmm.
with that winning mentality,
Mm-hmm.
not giving up, and be kind of responsible for your actions.
Mm.
So it's a whole lifestyle for me. And
Yeah.
be conscious with the world.
Love it. So fitness is a lifestyle or a lifestyle component, or the lifestyle is a part of it. You show up with intention, you have a plan, and you think about how am I going to do this and how it carries over the rest of my life.
So
Okay.
it doesn't even become a thought. It's just a
Mm.
norm, kind of like a
Yes.
habit. Although
It's a
my
norm.
guru says all habits are bad because you become a slave to whether a good habit or a bad habit.
Right.
This becomes kind of mechanical or mechanical is too empty. But I don't mind.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. So fitness is a thing that can become automatic. It doesn't have to be a habit per se. It's just a thing you do because it's part of who you are. Okay, love it. When we think about fitness, other things that come to mind. This is a huge topic, you guys, right? So feel free to say whatever's jumping to mind.
Working out to better my health.
Working out to better my health.
Doesn't
Yes.
matter what kind of workout it is.
Just some kind of workout. Yeah.
Something.
Mhm. Being able to do something. Right. Yes. There's a mental component. Absolutely. Right. Minds, bodies, that psychosomatic relationship is a real thing. We can't pretend we're going to work on our body space and nothing's going to happen in our brain. There's a documented connection, but also a very real psychological connection. If you're going to try to change your body, your mind is going to be a part of it. It's like the lifestyle piece. It's going to be pulled in no matter what. Anything else? I like it. So, well, fitness is many things. And this is, yes, a picture of cute puppies. So let's start with Darwin here for a moment. So generally, if you think about the Darwinian concept of fitness, you just got to be able and capable enough to reproduce, make cute offspring, in this case, puppies, and just move on. And so that means just a baseline level of fitness. So that concept of fitness. But fitness, some people think like CrossFit. They think about like this kind of like very aggressive, challenging level of fitness. Bodybuilding, apparently, I decided to start with some intense looking photos here because they're kind of fun. This guy's Instagram account is actually very entertaining. Okay, so moving on. Then we might think, hey, I'm going to be doing some cardio. He doesn't look like he's having much fun. I want to be able to play a recreational sport or pick up basketball in this case with my friends. Maybe you're like, I just want to feel able to go dancing. Mike was up late last night. I assume dancing as well. And so much dancing. You might say, hey, you know what? I want to be able to recreate with my pets. I want to just go outside, be spontaneous like this woman apparently running in nature in front of a camera. That was random, not planned at all. No leash, yeah. And then, or this insane guy in Southern Australia, he set a 9.5-hour plank record, world record, I think this year. Look at his face, come on. Anyway, but he's setting a world record. So that's kind of like more of an achievement thing, right? So fitness can show up, or, for a lot of people, it's just the water softener salt, honestly. They're like, I just don't want to wrestle with that freaking bag so much. The number of people who I'm like, what about like water softener salt? Like, yes, that thing. So anyway, it shows up in many ways. How does it carry over to your life? And how do we make it the most for you? Because in the end, fitness that you need is defined by your goals, right? That's what we kind of kicked it off with our takeaways today. The fitness you need is defined by your goals. So if you show up to a workout with a friend That's fine. It's fun. It's social. Maybe that's helpful for you to, have that support. But in the end, their workout is probably not for you. So it's good to think, okay, it's a nice one-off. Should I continue to tag along? I think if you've ever been in a gym space, you've seen someone who's clearly like they're really experienced and someone who's not so experienced, and they're making their inexperienced friend use the same weights, the same things. It looks like a bit of a train wreck that's coming on. So the fitness you need is defined by your goals. Now, here's the thing. If your fitness approach doesn't match your goals, we have an important disconnect here, which is that it's unsustainable. It's going to be unsustainable logistically, and it's going to be unsustainable emotionally because you're working on something you don't really care about. From there, you're going to get burnt out because you're doing something you don't actually really care about. So you're going to be putting in a lot of effort that isn't really resonating with you, as we talked about through this whole seminar series. It's got to resonate with you. And that will usually lead to lackluster results because for better or worse, yes, you need to work smarter. That's what we're going to talk about today, but you also have to work harder or at least work hard. And if you are working hard at something that you don't really care about, you tend to not work as hard, and then you tend to not see the results you want. And then lastly, what we often see is that there are injury risks because oftentimes someone thinks, I have to do this thing. I'm going to take running as an example. Running is not a bad thing. I've done a good bit of distance running in my life. Running is the thing where we think, I just need to have shoes or feet and legs and a willingness to run, and good things can happen. And for many people, good things do happen. But for a lot of people who don't actually like running or don't really care about running, they find themselves running. And it may not even align with their goals. A classic example is marathon training for fat loss. Those two are different things, very different things, actually. And fat loss, there's a much more efficient way than doing marathon training, honestly. So what we find is that if somebody pushes themselves into a box that they really don't need to be in, the likelihood of showing up when they probably should just listen to their body and back off is quite high. So the injury risk goes up astronomically when we're pursuing things that aren't really for our goals. Does that make sense? Okay. I like it. We've got more in the Zoom room. People are waking up today. This is good. All right. So from there, I'm going to say right now, do not exercise because it's, quote, good for you. If someone says, why do you exercise? And you're like, because it's good for me. That's fine. That's fine. But fine is a 4-letter F word. So in the end, don't do it just because it's good for you. Because here's the deal. If you do it because it's good for you, that means we're implying some kind of morals around it. Okay? When we put morals into this process, we start to be led astray a lot. We need you guys to be ruthless. Be really pragmatic about, does this get me what I want or not? So when we think about it, if it's good for you and you don't do it, you're bad. If you're not doing the thing that's good for you, what's wrong with you, right? But in the end, it's really about shifting it. Is either this approach of fitness or doing fitness supportive of my goals? This can be applied to anything in your work, in your life. Is this supportive of the life I want, basically? If you're doing this thing and you can't even find a connection between your goals and what matters to you and the thing you're doing in the moment, that's a disconnect. Does that make sense? And so if it's unsupportive of your goals, well, obviously you can say, I think I should shift. But if you start asking yourself that question, is the way I'm operating or is the thing I'm doing supportive of my goals, then you're much more likely to move towards something that actually resonates with you. So don't just exercise because it's good for you. It is. I'm not going to tell you it's not. I don't have a slide up here laying out all the health benefits and life benefits and mood benefits of exercise. We could spend all day just talking about those, which would be nice, but not that helpful for you. Instead, we're going to talk about how do you make it about you. So in the end, fitness is just a tool. And it really is nothing more than that. And I say that as someone who has loved fitness. Like fitness was the first thing in the world of health and fitness that I was really crazy pulled towards. I was obsessed about it. I read about it every day, every night. When I was in college lectures, I was brainstorming about fitness. And so what a surprise that my career path took me this way. Now, that said, that's all it is. It's a tool. So my younger self is dying inside right now. But at the same time, you use tools based on need. How much do you need to use it? You use those tools based on enjoyment. If you like using the tool, sure, use it more. If you like fitness, you can do it more. And at the same time, I want to talk about the DeWalt fitness model in a moment here. And I don't even know how this, that must be a like line that got held over. Anyway, whatever. The DeWalt fitness model is based on this idea that I have a DeWalt drill. I was gifted a DeWalt power drill. Does anybody here like power drills in the room? Fantastic. Okay, good people in the room. Okay, so here's the deal. I'm not particularly handy, but I'm handy enough to use a power drill for basic things. And I can tell you, I have certain things where I need to do it, right? I've got to fix something, I've got to screw something in, and I can't do it by hand. I'm going to need that power drill. I also kind of like using it too. So I contrive opportunities, I'm like putting together some like IKEA furniture or something. And instead of just using the screwdriver like a sane person, I line up all the screws and like, and I just want to work on my finesse. Okay. That's kind of fun. And then you might find that if you like using your power drill so much, you start to find projects and make up reasons to use this. You start to create opportunities to use it. And fitness is no different. For some people, they're just going to use it to do the things they need to do, get the results they want and call it good. For other people, they enjoy their fitness so much that they start to use it even more than they probably need to. For example, the person who likes exercising and rather than focusing on their food to create the changes they need, they just focus on exercise even more. In the last bucket, that project bucket, maybe you like fitness so much that you start to have things that you work towards, things you aspire towards, things you have for big goals because you just like the project. There's nothing wrong with that. But in the end, we have to look at fitness and say, do I need to, for example, sign up for that marathon to get that health result that I want? Is that a project that resonates with me? If it does, you go do that marathon. If it doesn't, reconsider. So when it comes to fitness, why do it? More people in the room, fantastic. You do fitness because of what you want. I've already said that a few times, a few different ways now, but in the end, only do it because you meant to and because it's for what you want. So let's do a little reframing here. When we think about fitness, we have a working definition here. The first part is that it's relevant to your goals. Okay, it's relevant to your goals. I'm saying this, and that's like the 7th way I've said it. It's relevant to your goals. It is goal relevant. It is all about the things you want. From there, the second piece is that fitness done well is going to develop your bodily ownership. Your ability to use, move, control, and enjoy what your body is capable of, more on that in a second, is a huge component of success long-term with fitness. And then the last piece is real-world carryover. Maybe, for some people, it's that whole basic like, well, you got to get off the toilet someday. There's that, sure. Maybe it's the Morton salt. Maybe it's the fact, honestly, me personally, I like to mess around. A thing that I've said to people for years in consults is I like to dick around when it comes to like playing with my relatives or just showing up and trying something out because I can, going to a class because I can. I've gotten hurt so many ways. I've had so many injuries in my life, which have been important lessons as a coach. But at the same time, it's because I wasn't really prepared when it comes to bodily ownership for the way that my real world works, which is I apparently take on fun challenges because I can. So what you need is going to be based on your goals, how you need to own your body and what it's capable of, and what your real world everyday life demands. If you're someone who's doing manual labor on a daily basis, we need to be prepared for that. The number of people who I think we know many in the room, or many people in the room might know of people who are doing physical labor on a regular basis and have feeling their bodies getting beaten up, their knees, their backs, their hips, their shoulders. I mean, if you know anyone who does hair, ask them about their wrists, ask them about their fingers and their hands. These are things that we can say the real world carryover is really important here for these people whose livelihoods even depend on it. So it's about love. It's always about love, isn't it? It's just, let's get some warm feelings. It's about love, everybody, but it's not about loving exercise for its own sake. We don't want you to fall in love with exercise. Instead, we want you to fall in love with what your body can do. Because for most people, whether it's something that you're like, oh, I'm the most impressive person on the planet, or like, you know what, I'm just really proud that I can do this thing without pain. Whatever that is, if you love what your body can do, you are much more likely to be successful near term, midterm, and definitely long term. So if we unpack fitness here for a second, there are 3 buckets of goals. And so what I'm going to ask you to do when you see these, when you think of these, when you hear these people on Zoom, depending on what you can see, ask yourself, what do I have going on for my goals, your own personal goals in these buckets? The first one we start with is how you feel. How you feel. That can range from pain you feel, tightness you feel, energy you feel, mood you feel, whatever it is. Is it a sense of ability? Is it a sense of being capable and competent? Is it a sense, you know what, I don't have to think twice about what I'm going to do in this moment because I know my body can handle it? Dare I say, healthy recklessness, how you feel is that first bucket. Second bucket is what you can do. Because we're going to go into this more later on, but if you have things that are interesting to you from an ability standpoint, whether they're just that everyday life stuff, or it's more achievement-based, like Mr. 9.5-hour plank, then you can see a lot more results long-term. And then the third bucket is how you look. If you care about how you look with all these, I recommend getting as clear as possible on what you want in your goals. And just know that if your fitness process is done correctly and done well, you should be able to hit all these things. All these things in a reasonable period of time, by the way. Okay, reasonable is the name of the game. So be greedy, everybody. Your fitness should cover today's needs, tomorrow's goals, and any future pursuit. That's a big ask, actually, though. And that's why a lot of people do fitness, they work hard, they try to do things, and they can struggle to get the results they want. So let's say if you or someone has like a body composition goal, whether you want to drop body fat, you want to build muscle, or both of those things, if you're thinking about your future, your tomorrow's goals, and you're only working on that, but you're missing out on today's needs of joint preservation, and you're ignoring the pain that your body's feeling, that's not going to work super well long term. Similarly, you might get burnt out because you aren't preparing for future pursuits or opening up avenues that are interesting to you to make sure that your fitness process is actually sustainable and compelling in the long term. As I said back in week 1, everything you see on these slides is entirely based on real world problems that people encounter on a very regular basis. So everything we talk about is basically from what we've seen in terms of why people get stuck and why people are really challenged. So then we start to unpack fitness a little bit here. We have 2 big buckets, training, and you'll notice I'm not saying working out. You're gonna hear me say workout because it's a colloquialism, but in the end, training and working out, I've got a slide on that later, training and working out are not the same thing. Training and working out are not the same thing. On this side, we've got movement practice. So movement practice is not stretching, though stretching is a part of it. It's not flexibility. Flexibility is a part of it. It's not yoga. Yoga is a part of it. We're going to talk about these things here. So when it comes to fitness, we've got this movement practice component. The purpose of a movement practice is something that's done regularly to make your body less fragile, because over time, oxidation of tissue, life happening, your body can become more fragile over time. And very small actions done regularly can actually make your body very not fragile. Your risk of pain goes down, your risk of injury goes down, these things we see a lot. From there, movement practice should expand your usable range of motion. So people in the room, what I ask you guys is stand up. I know you're like, stretch break. I know, so I don't like doing stretch breaks in like group context because everyone's like, oh yeah, the one person who took like a yoga class is gonna take us through a thing. People at home, give this a try. Lindsay, I think you're driving, so don't do that. From there, all right, usable range of motion here. Everybody, what we're gonna have you do, try this another time if you like. So what you're gonna do, if you want, put your hand on someone or something for balance. Take a leg of choice, and you're going to try to bring that leg as high as you can. Okay, just kind of notice how high. I know if your pants are limiting, your pants are limiting. So it goes. But notice how high it is. Okay. Now from here, let your hand go, and try to keep it in the same spot. You might have noticed that it came down a little, a bit, or a lot. Okay. Now bring your leg down. Now from here, you can try it on either side. Everybody, by the way, you all picked your good leg, just so you know. Everyone defaults to their more capable side. So if you want to try it on the other side later, go for it. But now what I'm going to ask you to do is replicate that by going as high as you can. Get back to that spot where you lifted your leg. And if you do it right, you should feel your other glute exploding. Very nice, everybody. Okay, come on out of there. Now, what I want to ask you, did anyone notice a discrepancy? Was it the same across the board? As high as you could lift it was the same as high as you could just use your own muscles to bring your leg up? Same? Mm-hmm. Some are like a little different, a little lower, not sure. So in the end, whether it was a small drop or a lot, what you'll see is, for example, if you imagine, if you ever go to a gym space, you'll see someone like being stretched out on a table, perhaps. What you'll see is a person, when you bring their limb into a position for them, that is stretchiness, that is flexibility, that is passive flexibility. That is not their range of motion. They actually don't own a lot of that range of motion. If, let's say, I bring my leg up here, and then I let my hand go, and my leg drops down to there, that means from here up to here, I don't own. That's not mine. And so what we find is that's not usable range of motion. And why that matters is because the less usable range of motion you have, the more likely you are to find yourself in a position that you don't own. And if you don't own that position and you get into it a little too fast with a little too much force, or usually this is more like playing around or like trying something out that we haven't done before, the risk of injury goes up a lot. So in the end, a good movement practice expands how much of your body's abilities you own and are capable of using. Now, why this matters is because this allows you to access new movements. Some of us are okay with eating the same thing for breakfast, lunch, and dinner for the rest of our lives. Is anybody in the room okay with that? Charlie's like, yes. Eddie's like, yes. Okay, right. So some people, congratulations, you two, you are in that bucket, but most people are not necessarily. And everybody at some point likes to have a little variety. And when we get into the food conversation next week with the mind to mouth model, I will tell you the single most consistent determinant of someone falling off their food plan is not enough variety. Now, for some people, they want to be entertained and have enough variety every single meal. For some people, you just got to mix it up for like one nice like meal out a week and you're good. It just depends on the person. But in the end, what we find with a movement practice is most people would like to, whether they know it or not, try other exercises, try other patterns, go to a class, try a thing, do something that they had not done before. And most people's goals actually require that you have more tools in your toolbox. So movement practice opens that up. Questions on that?
For me, this makes me think about like just I was skiing.
Mhm.
Like at my age now, I used to go for 4 days and ski a day,
Yeah,
but now I go for 1 day and
got it. Okay, so you used to be able to go skiing like every day on a trip and now just like one day.
yeah,
Mhm.
and I'm done even that day, like before the sun even sets, I'm done.
Got it. Yeah. And that's partly going to be movement practice. It's partly going to be training. When you go skiing, is it here in Minnesota or is that like, yeah, like Montana, like a good place? Okay, yeah, all right. So, like I know we go to Montana. Yeah, no, okay, good. First of all, smart. Yes, going to Montana. And then second, I'm guessing you're maybe not skiing a ton leading up to that, right? And
What
so,
I used to do, I mean, I used to go
and you could just do the same thing and it would work in the past.
go 4 days in a row, and
Mhm.
now I literally went like, I'm not gonna take it too much out.
Right. So in your case, and a lot of what we're going to be talking about here, it's about building a really big base. So what's really interesting is if you know that person, I mean that person who either has like this very great body composition and they don't seem to really have to work for it, or that person and they seem like super fit and strong, they can just show up and do stuff and there's no problem. That person can be all of you. If you are already, congratulations. You can be smug and smile to yourself. If you're not currently, then just know that you can become that person. The reason you can become that person is because if you train and have a movement practice that is actually broad and expansive enough and informed in how you do it, your general base gets so big. If you imagine around you is a circle, and that circle is all the abilities, all the things a person can do. Like you want to be a contemporary dancer, it's over here. You want to be a power lifter, it's over there. If you want to be a bodybuilder, it's over here. If you want to be able to juggle, it's over there. All these things that a body can do are around you in a circle. And most people tend to pursue one, maybe two directions in their life. But what you find is as you build a bigger and better foundation, you start to actually broaden the circle around you, around you, around you. And then suddenly you can touch and access a lot more things with a lot less effort. So you become the person who is like, you know what? I used to be able to go on a ski trip 4 days and I'd ski every day in a row. And now I couldn't. And then in the future, I can again. You can actually retain that. So let's talk about training here for a second. So when you think about training, there's a lot of stuff that comes to mind. There are a lot of colloquialisms and words and synonyms that we can use here. But I'm going to try to keep myself in check and I'm going to try to differentiate that training and working out are different. Now, a workout, which is very close to the phrase working out, a workout can be part of training. And that might be confusing for me to say. But in the end, I'll try to separate with more clear language. So training is a long-term process, okay? We're going to get into that a little bit more. And it's about accumulating exercise stress. We want stress. We want that. More on that in a little bit. And training is all about making or maintaining changes in the body. Now, that might sound kind of obvious initially, but when we start to compare that side by side against working out, you'll see why our intention really can define how good of results we get. All right. So from there, let's talk about that movement practice just a little bit more here for a moment. So movement practices are based in neurology. This is an area of expertise that I've delved into for quite a while now, several years. And in the end, your wonderful brain is regulating the environment inside and around you. Your brain is processing 300 billion signals per second. It's an incredible processing factory. I think I said back in week one, it's like a 20% of your energy use each day goes just to your brain. It's an energy hog. 300 billion signals per second about what's going on inside me, what's going on around me. And the whole idea is to keep you alive and keep you safe. That applies to movement as well. So if you ever experience tightness, an ache, soreness, dull pain, sharp pain, thank you, Eddie, strong pain, then those things are all cousins, actually. Tightness is actually a very low-key version of pain because those are all protective mechanisms. Does anyone here in the room have pain right now? Eddie, what do you got? Show me what you got.
Shoulder pain.
Shoulder pain, okay.
Both shoulders.
Okay, see, this is what happens when you eat the same things all the time, you guys. See, but this happened in both. Just kidding. All right, so now with that said, we're not going to take you guys through a whole process just yet. But the thing about it is, if you're experiencing pain, did either of you have did someone hit you? Did you get in a car crash or anything like that? Okay, so
It's chronic.
chronic, yeah, okay. And so the vast majority of pain is chronic, right? If you fall and you sprain your ankle, it should hurt, right? It should hurt, and it should look very swollen and horrible. But in the end, most pain is chronic, and with chronic pain, it's weird because there's no hurt moment. It wasn't like, oh yeah, I ran into a brick wall and now I'm hurting and I keep hurting. Usually it's this thing that just builds up over time. And what it is, and this is no insult to you two, this goes for all of us. I've had tons of pain in my career, and interestingly enough, none now, because we obey some of these principles, you can get rid of it. When it comes to pain, your brain is saying, I think we could use a bit more familiarity with this joint. I think you could use a break from some of the things we've been doing. I think we could use a bit more specific strength in certain positions for this joint to make me, the brain, feel safer. And just to help you with that, so you get the message, I'm going to give you some pain. So pain is a protective mechanism. It's actually anticipating problems. So an expression is hurt doesn't equal harm. So if you feel hurt, it doesn't mean like your labrum is tearing and sloughing off, like moment to moment, right? If anything, maybe you warm up a little bit and it feels pretty good, and it's all good. That's the brain saying, I want information. I want to feel that we can trust this joint. So movement practice helps you to develop that. Movement practice helps you to convince the brain, basically make a case that you don't need to feel pain anymore. And it's a very interesting process that can be done very reliably, honestly, using certain principles. Now, can anyone here do the splits? Prove it, Beth. No, I'm just kidding. All right, no, you don't have to. All right, so Andy, I'm looking at you. I know you can. All right, so here's the deal. When it comes to movement, everybody in this room has the bone structure, the skin, the connective tissue, and the muscle tissue, and the connective fascia that you can probably do the splits. But you can't do it right now, right? So the reason why is because your brain doesn't have the trust that you can do that safely. And the only way you can do that is by guiding it to understand over time what you're capable of. And that's what a movement practice really does. So when we experience tightness, someone's like, let's do a toe touch. Okay, that's it. Well, you can definitely go farther. It's not a length conversation in your hamstrings unless you're maybe born that way. Instead, it's your brain saying, I don't think that's safe. And why this matters is because maybe you've got an exercise that, let's say you want to, maybe you two are trying to beef up your shoulders. That's where the shoulder ache came from. You say, I want to beef up these shoulders. And there's some exercises that are really great for that. But if your brain feels that the shoulder joint is destabilized, and the shoulder joint has a massive range of motion, right? We can go through a pretty huge amount of space with that shoulder. If your brain thinks that that is not a controlled, supported joint, even if it is pretty darn capable, right? It's not about a capable thing. It's just what does your brain think? Then you're going to get the brakes put on. You're going to be trying to drive with the brakes on. And so your shoulder might not be centered in the socket. It might be kind of pulled down or rolled in, or maybe you just find you can't get into some of those corners that you really should be able to. Suddenly, because the movement practice might need to be tended to, we're not able to use really great exercise tools. Does that make sense? Okay, so Dr. Andrea Ospina is someone who I did education with several years back. And one of the things that he talks about is the mobility. Maybe we've heard this, right? Mobility, flexibility. Mobility and flexibility are not the same. Mobility is the combination of flexibility plus strength. Mobility is usable range of motion. And it is one of the biggest determinants of someone getting hurt. And it's one of the biggest determinants of someone being able to exercise or do fitness or do training for the long term. In the end, if exercise and training is supposed to be stressful, then we want to make sure that we have minimal stress on the joints, maximal stress on our tissue, heart, lungs. That's the big idea here. So in the end, mobility is flexibility plus strength. The expression we use is load while you lengthen, stretch while you strengthen. So some of the best exercises that you can find are ones where you are creating a large stretch in space while tensioning your muscles. So movement preparation is really just about being prepared. Movement practice is just about being prepared for the play that you want to do and for the work you want to do in your life, your exercise, or whatever. And as someone who's had, I think I've injured just about every zone of my body that I can. And almost all of those have been chronic injuries. Like almost none of them have been acute injuries. From my neck to my toes, I've injured something quite fantastically. And what's really nice is every single one of those things has been rehabbed, worked through, and no longer an issue through movement practice. But the thing about it is injuries are an amazing showstopper. They will stop you from making progress because you cannot do training at the level that you need to or want to for your enjoyment or for your goals. Questions on movement practice? Anybody in the Zoom room?
But if you start load while you lengthen?
Load while you lengthen. So for example, in stretch while you strengthen. Load while you lengthen, stretch while you strengthen. I'll give an example. So let's say we're talking about like biceps. I want to get some sweet cannons here. Well, in the end, what I can tell you is that you can have healthier elbows. See, biceps curls are not just for vanity. Robbie, I see you in the room. I know like you want some cannons here. So here's the deal. When it comes down to this process, if you are doing biceps curls, they're actually a great exercise for many reasons, stabilizing the shoulder joint, stabilizing the elbow joint, and done certain ways, you can have really strong wrists. But in addition to the fact, you can get some sweet arms dangling off your torso. Now, with that said, if you were to do a biceps curl where you're just like, you just hold and you just resist yourself, you will get stronger. You'll get stronger at specifically that little range of motion. There's a 15-degree carryover each direction, so it's a 30-degree window. That means that when you open your arm more, close your arm more, you have almost none of the strength carryover. And on top of that, what we find is there's this fun term, it's called stretch-mediated hypertrophy, which means muscle growth because of a stretch. And you actually can grow your muscles via stretching. It usually has to be very intense stretching. But what's even better is when you tension a muscle, like hold a weight perhaps, and you go through a full range of motion. So that stretching and contracting of the muscle with that tension actually creates the greatest health benefit for the joint and the joints that are part of it, as well as muscle growth too. So anyway, movement practice sometimes looks like progressions to strength training, where you're really exploring what your body is capable of. And I'm doing this wavy thing with my spine because most people benefit from loading their spine in a really big range of motion if they know how to do it correctly. Yeah, tell me about that.
So I work out with clients.
Yeah.
But I do it like
Lots of control. Yeah.
and then I change it throughout the week where it goes blasted shot the muscles.
Mhm. Yeah,
And that's where you break down the tissue.
totally. Absolutely. Send them it's like you looked ahead of my slides. All right. So we're going to talk about sending the body a message. Just keep those ideas to yourself, Eddie. All right. So no, that's it. That's it. Yeah, which is great. I love it. So when it comes down to this process, there is a misconception about weight, right? Because mechanical tension, and we're just talking about muscle growth here and strength building for a second, you guys, but mechanical tension, like let's say, Eddie, instead of using 20s, like, hey, let's just do 100s. More is better, right? It's America, more is better. So in the end, we go to 100s. Well, the likelihood that someone can safely control that, not super likely. And on top of that, what we find is that we're probably going to fight so much to even move the weight that we're not going to get that stretch benefit either. So we're missing out control, tempo, big parts of the conversation. But let's take a moment here. I want to talk about stress. Because this is actually directly related to your fitness goals and directly related to how you do fitness. So when I say stress, what comes to mind? Not enough time. Yes, tell me more. Difficult clients. Oh yeah, not enough time for difficult clients. You need more. They're just taking all your time. Time vampires. Okay, yeah. Anything else? Too much going on. Not enough time. Too much going on. Needy clients. Okay. Any other stressors? Money. Yes. And someone's like, here's a bucket of money, and you'll be like, oh, I'm a little less stressed today. I don't know what that's about. Yeah. Anything else? Toxic neurons. Good. Okay, so we're going to run off that here for a second, because usually what people talk about is mental emotional stress, which is true. Those are all stressors. But to Eddie's point, they're actually chemical stressors that can exist in your environment or in your body. There are physical stressors, mechanical stressors. If you said, hey, Max, you know what? You seem like you're in shape. I'm just going to give you this 300-pound weighted vest to wear all day long. I don't think I'm going to feel great at the end of the day, you guys. That's too stressful, right? Or it'd be a lot of stress for more than like a very, very, very short period of time. Then from there, we think about, let's see, there's temperature stress. Has anyone ever gone in a sauna? Yeah, saunas are great. Has anyone ever done a cold shower? You crazy person, I did one this morning.
I can't do it here yet.
Yeah. That was in Miami. I feel like the water temp is a little different this time of year. Yeah.
Here it's just way like cold.
For sure, yeah. So, so we're gonna get into hormetic stressors here in a little bit. But in the end, the idea is that stress shows up in a bunch of different ways, from temperature, radiation. I mean, anyone heard of Chernobyl? That's a real thing. Our bodies are constantly responding to stress. But the crazy thing is, not all stress is bad. In fact, some stress is really, really good. So here's an essential sidebar. If you're going to understand fitness, you have to understand stress. You have to understand how you use stress in the body. So stress is another way of saying stimulus. Stimulus is just a signal. It's just telling your body to do something, to respond. In the case of exercise, fitness, that's a hormetic stressor. A hormetic stressor is like a sauna, it's like a cold shower, it's like eating broccoli. There is a small stress response that occurs because of the thing you just did. Broccoli has some compounds that cause a little stress response in the body, and then a lot of good things are proliferated to the rest of your body as a result. In the case of going in a sauna, tons of research around it, many great adaptations, many great things happen in your body because of the heat. There's a thing called heat shock protein, and that creates a bunch of positive things because of the heat exposure. Stay in the sauna all day, you will not feel so great. That's probably too much dose, right? Too much stimulus, too much stress. Cold shower, same thing. Get in the cold shower for like 2 minutes, you're gonna be awake. You're gonna have a bunch of heat shock responses as well, just from the other direction. So all that said, fitness is a hormetic stressor where you put in a little bit and you get a big response back. If you work out 3 hours a week, that's less than 2% of your entire week. 168 hours in the week, 3 hours of exercise is less than 2% of your entire life right there. And yet you can live for years longer, be much happier, have a healthier like blood lipid profile when you go to your doctor, whatever it is. So many benefits can come from those small little actions. So the dose determines the effect. We talked about that before. The dose determines the effect. And the dose over time determines results. And that's going to lead us into training in a second. But here's the thing. Your body is a goldfish, you guys. Your body's a goldfish, okay? It's a beautiful goldfish. Your body's a goldfish because it doesn't remember necessarily for very long. In the case of fitness, in the case of exercise, let's say you send a fitness-based response of stress to the body, you've usually, depending on how you did the workout, got between 24, usually like 48, and 72 hours of response in the body. And then it flatlines again, which is why we don't just work out once a week. Usually we have to do it a little more often than that. So we have to send a message. Eddie, we're coming back to you here. We're sending a message to the body, and it has to be substantial enough that it gets the memo. At the same time, if it's too much, like sitting in a sauna for 8 hours, that's going to be too much, right? So with that in mind, I want to share a quick anecdote. So back in the spring, I think, or in the summer, my wife and I were walking our dog. We live near the St. Anthony Parkway, northeast Minneapolis, and across the parkway, we saw this woman walking her dog, and it seemed like it was just like a new dog, and she's trying to train it. And this dog's trying to sniff some, like, I think there's like a dead thing on the ground. She's just like, no, leave it, good dog, yes, no, yes, yes. And everything was the same tone. Everything was the same tone. And if you have a dog, you realize that they only understand English like so much. And in the end, that dog is probably a very confused dog to this day. And so what we find is the body is like that dog. The body is a goldfish dog, I guess. So in the end, we have to send a clear signal, a clear message to the body to do what we need it to do.
I would argue that children.
And children are probably the exact same thing. Yeah. Little sociopaths who are goldfish dogs. Absolutely. Yes. Oh, yeah. No, you're 100% right. Yeah. Absolutely. You're totally right. Stress and cortisol, they do go together. So let's talk about this here, everybody. Working out versus training. Working out versus training. So when it comes down to this process, this is one of the, if you were to understand, like if you were to look at your own fitness and how you do fitness, I would recommend, we're going to send out the slides, like I send them to Jordan, she'll send it to you guys. But in the end, this is probably one of the biggest slides you can look at if you're going to reflect on how you do fitness, okay? So here we go. Working out. I put it in red. Working out is great, but at the same time, training is a whole lot better. Thus, it gets the sea foam. So working out tends to have no direction, okay? Working out doesn't usually have a main direction, whereas training is very directional. In fact, you are doing training because you have a thing you want to get to, and you are trying to get to that point. Working out also tends to be very short term. It is an injection of exercise stress, but you're not really thinking about anything beyond maybe the 24 to 72 hours of response you get in the body. Instead, training is entirely long-term. Training is what gets you results because it's a long-term process. You know that your body's a goldfish. And so you know that you can't just do one great banger of a workout with your friend on Saturday and then wait 3 more weeks before you do anything again, because in the end, it's a long-term process. Your body has forgotten the effects within at least 72 hours. From there, working out tends to look like a one-off input of exercise stress, whereas training is about stacking signals of exercise stress every once in a while to punctuate the response, to give your body a clear message that it needs to pay attention. Your body is only going to respond for a short period of time. If you think about it, your body's continually responding. I said, what, 300 billion signals per second? That's in your brain. Every single one of those signals causes an automatic response in the body at the hormonal level, at the skin level, at the cellular level, at the tissue level. Your body is continually reforming and changing itself over. Because of that, it's that whole, like, you'll be like a different, none of your cells will be the same you in 6 months or something like that. And that's a true thing. And what that means is that you've got to keep up with that pace of change. So you have to keep informing the newcomers, the new cells. Hey, this is what we need. Hey, this is what we need. Working out tends to be more about effort over efficacy. I want to feel like I did something. I want to feel like I put in a high level of effort rather than being like, what are the results I'm going to get today from working out? Whereas training is all about impact and effort. If you're having a training conversation with someone, you're talking about what are the results we can quantifiably get through this phase. Usually a training phase is at least 4 weeks, 6 weeks, and we're stacking those phases. But in the end, if you look at nothing else, don't get me wrong, feel what you feel. What you feel is real. Feelings are important in training, but working out tends to chase a feeling, whereas training chases adaptations. Working out chases a feeling, training chases adaptations. I felt like I worked out today. I felt like I worked hard. And you did. You probably did work hard. You probably did work out. But in the end, if you're chasing adaptations, you're trying to get your body to get the memo that it needs to change something. Make me a bit fitter. Make me a bit stronger. Make me a bit more enduring. Make me more able to tolerate discomfort. Make me build more muscle, drop more body fat. We're trying to cause an adaptation in the body, which is why flavor of the day for working out typically isn't recommended unless you're really good about being consistent about how you progress your flavor of the day where it's actually looking like training. So I'm voting for training over working out. Does this make sense? Okay, ask me questions here. What's going through your mind, or tell me what you're thinking as we're looking at this. Ooh, I'm training every day, and so I'm going to go work out. Yep, absolutely. For sure. It does sound, when sometimes people think training, they think like you're like an athlete or something. They're like, oh, no, I'm not like training, I guess. I'm just going to work out. Yeah.
See how different it is when it's
Mm. Right. Yep. Absolutely. It's going to affect your motivation too. Right. Training is like, we're going somewhere, everybody. We're reading the book. We're reading this story. Whereas working out is just, kind of a one-off thing you found on the internet.
So for me, when it comes to training, it's like what individually out of all of the things that I've done.
Yeah. Absolutely. So HIIT works for Eddie, and that's because you've seen it get results. It's getting adaptations for you. And that's the big thing, you guys. You might know someone who does HIIT who has not gotten results. You know Eddie who has gotten results. So in the end, it's about what works for you, right? For some people, I mean, okay, there are so many studies. If you ever see this, by the way, okay, this is going to happen in the next year. The next 365 days, maybe the next month, you will hear about an article or see something where there's a study like you can burn blah, 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 more calories in 4 minutes of high intensity exercise than doing cardio for 30 minutes. And there's some truth in it. However, a few things happen in those studies. One, the dropout rate is incredibly high because it's not sustainable for a lot of people. For the people who did get the great results, they are a small subset of those people because they happen to be the great mental fit for that. They're like, yes, I'd rather crush myself for 4 minutes than do 30 minutes of cardio. You also find that for some of those people, they don't see the same results because there's a big swing back. They're actually a genetic setup. They have a genetic predisposition that when you do high intensity exercise that is too high, the rest of their day, they become a sloth. And so if you become a sloth, you disappear into the couch, you become an active couch potato, then you worked out hard and you're like, oh, I deserve this. And you just like hang out the rest of the day. Those people find that their calorie burn kind of evens out actually, which is so sad because they crush themselves for that time, but it was only 4 minutes, I guess. So anyway, you will see a study sometime in the next 365 days, depending on the media you look at, talking about that. In the end, we have 4 priorities though when it comes to exercise. So this first one, safety. Yeah, safety. So put on your bike helmet, everybody, because here's the deal. If you exercise appropriately, by the way, you should be able to hit all 4 of these priorities. This should show up in every single set you do, every single exercise you do, every single workout you do. I'm just going to say that right now, if you want to get the best for your body. Have some safety in your mind, which means no pain or no increase in pain, no injury or risk or increased risk of injury. Every single exercise, even the most ridiculous things you've seen on the internet, can actually be done safely. Really, I mean, even punching a wall can be done more safely than people think. So there's a way to do it right. I wouldn't recommend the wall punching. You would get thick knuckles though. Do it long enough, you can get some adaptations. All right, so from here, the thing about it is that if you have to think about pain, by the way, I want to clarify, pain in your joints, not okay. Pain, we're going to rephrase that, discomfort in your muscles, in your heart and lungs, very okay. That's a sign of stress. That's a sign of stress that you want. But if you get pain in your joints, anything that's really close to a bone structure, that means that you probably want to adjust something, change the weight, pick a different exercise, talk to someone who might have an idea for you. If you are safe and you're not increasing your risk of injury, because as we said, there's no better way to stop making progress than to be freaking injured. If you have an injury and you got to take 2 months off, or you have to back off on what you do for 2 months, good luck seeing progress in the long term, because it's going to take you another 2 months to get back to baseline. It's usually a 1-to-1 ratio. So you take 2 months off, it'll take you 2 months to get back just to where you were, then probably another 2 months to actually make progress. That's a 6-month cycle to move forward, only 2 months. Sorry. All right, now with that said, hit the target. Every single exercise you do should have some kind of intention. I want to hit these muscles. I want to strengthen this pattern. I want to feel this thing. If you aren't sure what you're supposed to be connecting with, then maybe reassess what you're doing. But in the end, the people who's heard of the mind-muscle connection? The mind-muscle connection? So this is historically considered to be bodybuilding bro speak and bro science. But as it turns out, the mind-muscle connection has been written about for a very long time, back to the late 1800s with movement culture and physical culture. But the gist is, for a long time, bodybuilders in particular would say you can grow your muscles or get them stronger faster by trying to feel them working, like literally actively feel, right? And he's like, oh yes, okay. So if you can feel that. Now, for the longest time, people said, that's just the big bodybuilder bros who happen to be like Hulks walking around and like, I don't think it works. Then you look at the person, you're like, I think it works. Now, as it turns out, in like 2013, Brad Schoenfeld is a PhD. He's done so much cool research on exercise science and muscle growth. Study basically found you get more muscle growth and faster strength gains by focusing on your muscles and trying to feel them. So what a concept, but it took about 100 years for people to actually affirm. So in the end, you try to put your brain in your body. That's one thing we often say a lot. Put your brain in your body and feel what's going on. And ideally with every exercise, if you look at it, maybe you got it written on a sheet of paper, you have it in your mind, you know what each thing is supposed to be doing for you. Connect with that. From there, full range of motion, full range. Now, full range of motion is interesting because that is saying you go as far as you can while still hitting the target, right? If you go farther and you start to lose control of the position, you're not feeling the zones you're supposed to feel anymore, or back to the bike helmet, you start to make yourself unsafe and you start to move into a place that you can't control, you've gone too far. So you go as far as you can. And the reason does anyone remember that thing I just said, that little rhyme, like, stretch while you strengthen, load while you lengthen. I figured I would just sing it to you all and then see what happened. Anyway, with that said, stretch while you strengthen, load while you lengthen. What we find is that whether you're talking about strength, whether you're talking about endurance, whether you're talking about just, I want to have strong joints or I want to build muscle, stretching your muscles to the biggest range of motion you can with load is going to get you better and faster results. And if you're doing all those things, you have your bike helmet on, you're hitting the target intentionally, you're going about as far as you can safely and with control, put in effort, lots of effort. You've got the green light. When you are training, there's nothing wrong with effort. The only kicker though, is that most people tend to start over here because we're working out. If you're working out and you start with just focusing on effort, you're chasing a feeling. Whereas here, if you were thinking, I gotta be safe, I have an intention here that I want to hit the target, and I'm going to go as far as I can hitting that target to get the best results I can, and I apply effort, that's starting to look like training. Does anyone feel like they are hitting at least one of these buckets? Oh, good, good. And if you're like, I don't exercise, Max, well, I'm like, okay, that's fine. You can, when you start, then you can do some of these things. Is there anyone that you're like, I don't know if I do that one that intentionally? Like, yep, you don't have to say it out loud. All right, so from here, myth versus magic. It's my favorite game show. I hope this appears on Ellen at some point. But in the meantime, myth versus magic, it's a fun thing. So we're going to talk about some things we've heard. So I would love to know, before we get into it, is there anything that you've heard about fitness or that you think about fitness? You're like, is that true? Is there anything that you've heard that like someone said, or you're like, I don't know, sounds pretty reliable? Anything at all?
70% what you eat and 30% what you do.
70% what you eat and 30% what you do. Wrong. It's 80% and 20. I'm just kidding. Yeah, it is a big impact there. I don't know the exact percentages, but I would say yes, food. Well, I'll put it this way. There's certain results you can't get without fitness. There's certain results you can't get without food. Is it an even split? I don't think so. So yes and no. Good. I like that one. Yeah. Anything else that you heard about fitness training?
Max?
As we go, you might have some pop in your head, but let's
Max?
take on our first myth here. You need to
Max?
work out every day to see results. Now, some of you might be like, well, that's kind of ridiculous, but I'll tell you, there are a lot of people who feel, they'll say, Max, I can't do this whole exercise thing. I don't have time to work out every day. I can't do that. Well, honestly, we're going to start with this softball here because in the end, you don't actually need to work out every day to see results. For most people, many people, honestly, a lower frequency of training can actually be very, very effective. 3 times a week can be totally sufficient for great results. If you're hell-bent on working out for 15 minutes at a time, you might need to work out more than 3 days a week. But in the end, 3 days a week actually works really quite nicely. And a lot of people are doing more work than they need to. I'm going to talk about that later on in my own story. But most people are actually working out more than they need to and not focusing on efficacy and effect. The myth now, what got me here must be maintained forever. This is one that people don't say very much, but then when we start talking to people, we realize this is how we operate. The idea that, well, I got to this point with these results. I have to keep doing this thing. I have to live my life like this. Well, the fun thing about this is my favorite myth magic moment right here. It's the 30% rule. So the 30% rule I learned from an ultra runner who had done multiple 100-mile races, which I think is absurd. I will never even entertain that concept. But in the end, we all have our hobbies or boredom, whatever. So in the end, what he told me was, I said, how do you train for this, right? Like, what do you do to prepare for this? And he's like, well, it's so far that I never run more than 30% of the race distance. Now, he's like, because I know that the rest of it is mental. And the training process to build up to an 100-miler, if you're like, we'll just go for my 50-mile run today, you're going to get so beaten up in the process, you just can't do that. So in his case, now this guy is not an elite runner, but he had completed multiple 100-milers, which is far more than most people will ever even think about completing. What he had pointed out was something I came to find later on in terms of strength building, high intensity performance, sprint performance, and muscle building. And what it is that if you get to a certain point of a certain ability, if you will, in this case, using 30% of what you did to get to a certain point, you can usually maintain what you've got. If you were putting in 10 sets a week for your legs, let's just say, of strength training or muscle building, you can honestly usually maintain with like 30%, maybe 40%, so 3 or 4 sets a week. So I said this early on, but if you systematically go where you need to go with your results, you should be able to back off and maintain where you are with actually a lot less effort. One of the coaches on our team, his name's Alec. Alec is a lovely guy. He's also a psychopath, and he is someone who has been a professional obstacle course racer. In the back, like, that's not me. That's not me. And yeah, maybe it's the closest. Sorry for offending. All right, so with that said, so in the end, Alec is someone who's been a professional obstacle course racer. Like, he's just insanely fit, insanely strong, muscle dude who looks like a house. And Alec is someone who's run a mid-low 4-minute mile. And which is very fast. And if you looked at him walking around, you're like, how did that ball of beef run that fast for that long? And in the end, he's someone who specializes in this arena. And one of the things I'll say about it is that he and I were talking. We were doing a planning session. We were grabbing some dinner afterward, and we were just chatting about it. And he mentioned that nowadays he runs maybe less than 10 times a year. He does less than 10 training runs a year, but he can still almost anytime he wants run a 450. Whereas before he'd done like a 430. So he can still run a stupidly fast mile, running about 10 times a year. And the reason is because he has built, as we talked about, such a broad base, that big circle. He has such a broad base of strength, ability, skill, and fitness and endurance that all he needs to do, it's not even 30%, right? He's barely doing anything, honestly. He's running like once a month, basically, to maintain his abilities. So in the end, just know that if you get to a point that you want to be at, you can maintain that with about 30% of the effort. So from there, the last myth, I need a gym to train successfully. Has anybody, was anybody going to a gym during the pandemic I guess, when lockdown started and has not gone back? Show of hands. Okay. Did you despair? Were you like, my life is gonna fall? No, you're like, we'll be fine. Jelly, were you like panicking or anything like that?
No.
Okay, fantastic. Partially because you knew the magic behind this, which is that you don't necessarily need a gym to train successfully. A biceps curl machine in a typical gym can cost about $5,000 and take about 20 square feet of space, which is kind of absurd. Incidentally, what's kind of fun is that non-gym training, either at your home, outdoors, or otherwise, can be just as or more effective. Now, we've seen this a lot. Actually, about 90% of our client base is not training in gyms. And we have an approach to how we do that. But I'd love to know, why do you think that training at home or elsewhere outside of a gym can actually work really, really well for a lot of people? More accessible?
Well, not committed to like driving up to this place.
Yeah, you don't have to drive.
Kind of like love-hate relationship.
Yeah, you don't have to go out of your way to go to a place you have a love-hate relationship with for a lot of people. Yes.
Like when I was a lot younger, here, about different things, I thought I had to like
Had to get dressed up to go.
right?
Yeah.
Matching.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's still a thing. I will tell you, that is still a thing in gym spaces. Absolutely. You know, you go on like a Friday night, you're like, oh, people looking good tonight. No one's working out, but people are looking good. Okay. Yeah. And so absolutely, there's a piece to it, which is accessibility, convenience. If you had to drive a 15-minute drive, which is pretty short for a lot of people, for most people, it's a longer drive to get to their gym space. 15-minute drive, that's 30 minutes round trip. That's you getting in the parking lot, walking in, finding a locker, blah, 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 blah. Next thing you know, you spent 40 to 45 minutes just in transit to go. You could have done your workout by that time and never left your house. And a lot of people go just to swipe for the discount. I hope they at least use the sauna, as we've all talked about, as a hormetic stressor. Yeah. Right, you're absolutely right. There's a lot of people who do that. Hopefully, but that's the thing is, so there's like the swiper, and then there's like the whirlpool person. You know, there's nothing wrong with being a whirlpool person, but you just get, it's like, just go in a little farther, use the whirlpool, and then leave. You know, do something with the amenities. Okay, now with that said, in the end, what this comes back to is it's got to work for you. For some people, another piece here is that it is psychologically unappealing or unpleasant to go to a typical gym space. That is the thing that many people encounter. If you've ever been in a mainstream gym at 5 p.m. on a weeknight, you know what a meat market looks like. And you know, when there are people that are there checking each other out, there are people that are making a lot of noise, there are people that don't feel comfortable being in that space, and they're not able to just focus on their self-care. If you can't focus on you, it's not going to get done. And if it's not appealing to go, it's definitely a lot less likely to get done, which is why the gym sign up and turnover is so high come January. It's not just the whole shame of resolutions and all that, it's that the gym space doesn't actually appeal to a lot of people. So what's really nice in terms of the COVID process is that it was nice in the case of the COVID situation we've had going on, you know, a lot of downsides, but some of the upsides, that we're reconsidering how we do things. And that's what this seminar series is all about, right? We're going to reconsider how we do things. And that's what I want to do with fitness today. So let's talk about some classic traps for a moment. Classic traps. If you're winging it, either in your session or with your schedule, I'll pick a day to go. The likelihood of succeeding with fitness is a lot lower. It's also possible to exercise too much. Too much is very individual, but I'll tell you this. So I had a period of time where I was trying to work on too many things at once, and I didn't have an understanding of what the body limits were and what signs to look for. This is very early on in my process. I got up to a point where I was working out about 12 hours a week, and I was not an endurance athlete. If you're not an endurance athlete, you should not be working double digits and working out for double digits, unless you're a very high level elite athlete doing like double day sessions or something, and you've got the Olympics on your mind. I was not making very good progress for those 12 hours a week, which is kind of interesting. And in fact, I crashed my hormones. I basically wrecked my results. I saw no progress for like a 9-month period. It was incredible. I was working out more and I was getting less. Nowadays, I'm actually making progress with a newborn at home and less sleep. I'm working out about like 3 to 4 hours at most in a week, and it's very fragmented, usually in 15-minute pockets. It's crazy what can happen when you focus on effect and training rather than working out and a feeling. So from there, a really common trap we see is people doing too much cardio and too little resistance training relative to their goals. If you're an endurance athlete or you care about endurance, you should be doing the cardio, right? That is a thing that should be happening. But what we find, I'm going to give a classic example of body composition change. Body composition change is one of the most common goals in the United States right now: drop body fat, build muscle in some form. And what we find is that you can actually achieve very high levels of change in both categories, for sure muscle building, but also body fat loss with no cardio use. For those of you who like cardio, do it. For those of you who don't, rejoice. So there are a lot of things you can do. We're gonna get into that more in a second. We also find, again, another trap, insufficient mobility for your exercise choices, i.e. not having a movement practice or maybe not even warming up. I used to be that person who was like trying to do impressive things in my warm up because I thought I looked so stone cold, like, oh yeah, this is my warm up. I'm not even, and then I got hurt, so that didn't work out well. Having a fallback plan is wonderful. Having a fallback schedule is wonderful. If you don't have one and your life has moving parts like children, a job, clients, people who need your time and energy, and you're not in a vacuum, then you're going to want to have a backup plan or schedule to make sure you just get the things done that you need. We talked about will power-ups and data, how to have more willpower back in week 2. Has anyone tried measuring anything in terms of their progress with anything they're working on in terms of a system? You might be like, Max, I'm not trying to do any systems right now. That's fine. That's fine if not. But have you thought about or considered measuring things, measuring what you're doing? I see some nods. Can I ask, what have you guys played around with measuring?
I mean, last year I was really, I lost like 30 pounds last year. So
Awesome.
I did my fitness pal and I was like tracking everything I was eating, like how long I was working out and everything. So
You lost 30 pounds, tracking your food, being aware. Awesome. Did you try to make any changes with the food intake itself? Or
yeah.
Okay, you did. Yeah. It wasn't just like, I'm just going to see what I do and be aware.
Oh,
Yeah.
no, I was
Yeah.
like, I'm very
Yeah.
focused on it.
Usually that kind of result won't happen unless you try to make changes. So nice job. Okay. Any other things anyone's thought about or played around with measuring either lately or in the past? Macros and micros. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's just not as dense maybe.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, plant-based proteins for sure. You just got to get more. You got to be intentional. Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So measuring the macros, measuring the micros, tracking food intake. So you guys are looking ahead to the food unit, which is great. Anything else that you guys have tried or thought about would be helpful for you personally, your professional life, your fitness, anything in your personal life that you're like, that might be helpful for me to kind of measure to get some understanding of how that's going. So we talked about
Max,
previously.
Max.
Does anyone here sleep like a champ? You're just like, I sleep so well. Okay, for the rest of you who did not raise your hand, I'm sorry. But you know, a lot of people don't sleep super well. In the end, sleeping is like cheating. If you want to drop body fat, sleep more. If you want to build more muscle faster, sleep more, sleep better. If you want to show up for your best professionally, more sleep can be very helpful, right? Now, some of you might be saying, well, Max, you know, it's not that I don't sleep or that I don't want to sleep, like dancing. I get it, right? You got to stay up late for the club. Now, at the same time, I get to call you out every time now. So at the same time, you might want to track, when am I going to bed? How many hours of sleep am I getting? How many times did I wake up? Rate your quality of sleep the next morning. 10, that was amazing. 5, that was fine. 1, I feel completely exhausted. I didn't sleep awake. What you'll find is that that trend gives you more awareness around what you're doing. You might find yourself making changes just from that. Okay, so from there,
Max.
raise your hand. Yes. What is your question?
So I work out in Orange Theory 4 times a week, and I don't see any results. And I've been doing it since February.
Martha, feel free to type your question into the chat, and I will keep peeking over there. I appreciate you raise your hand though. That's kind of fun. Okay, so from there, one thing that is really a classic trap is people picking things that they don't actually like to do for workouts. You're not going to necessarily enjoy every last moment. You're not going to be that person who's like in a stock photo, like, yeah, that doesn't necessarily happen. But you will find yourself really struggling to show up if you don't want to go to the gym, if you don't find it an appealing experience, if you don't feel like you want to do anything that's there. Oh, Robbie says they can't hear us. Interesting. Robbie, you can hear me? Okay, you can hear me, so that's good. All right. Interesting. Okay, well, I'm gonna make a note here. Dear Martha, please type your question in the chat. Sincerely, Max. Okay. All right. From there, another trap is when people focus solely on body composition change. I love the process of body composition change. It's one area of my specialty, and I really think it's a super fun category. You actually can find it gets a lot deeper than just vanity. It actually goes far more into psychology. It goes far more into behavioral change. You can't make lasting, impressive body composition change unless you really change a lot of stuff. Case in point, going through this process of tracking food in a way that you like. Had you done that before, by the way?
I tried, but I wasn't committed.
Tried but wasn't committed before, right? Absolutely. So you have to make a lot of change. But what in the end, if you care about body composition change, what I'm going to talk about here is, we're not at the slide yet. Never mind. It'll be later on. You really want to make sure that you have things that also resonate with you in terms of like that, how I feel and what I'm able to do. Because those things will give you also simultaneously meaningful pursuits. All these things feed into your results. Fitness is very multifaceted. So the more you know. I didn't have a rainbow effect, but I thought that'd be kind of nice. So let's talk about body composition change because it's so darn common. And also the things you do for body composition change give us insights into the rest of fitness. So when people talk about, who's ever heard, the idea of being toned? Yes, toning, get toned. Okay, got it. All right, Martha, we're gonna come back to you in just a second here. Toning is recomposition. I want to address Martha's question real quick. I work out in Orange Theory 4 times a week. Nice job for you. Good work. That's very committed. And I don't see any results. I'm sorry. So when it comes down to this process is what you're going to see in seminars today, 4, 5, and 6. A lot of times results when it comes to body composition change, if that's what you're seeking, Orange Theory is a great way to have kind of like a cardiovascular general fitness level of fitness development. If you're looking to see body composition change, Orange Theory has a few trade-offs. One of those is very high intensity. For some people, that's great. For some people, maybe not so much. In the end, what we're going to be talking about here in a moment, as well as when it comes down to getting any results, you are trying to coax the body to be cooperative. The body needs to cooperate. And when we send it that message, for example, like I go back to that woman who's like, yelling at her dog to go and like, no, don't go after that thing. In the end, like, to be clear, I would be like, oh my God, what did she just do? If she kicked her dog, first of all, that's too much of a signal, right? That's completely not okay. Her body, or her dog in this case would be like, what did you just do? That dog is probably not going to cooperate very well, and it's going to be a very negative experience. Similarly, sometimes when people are working through change for their bodies, the signal is maybe too much, or their body is not thinking it's safe enough and able to cooperate. More on that with food and more on that with capacity when we get into that in a few weeks. So recomposition is another way of saying toning, because when people talk about toning, what they're really talking about is I want to drop some body fat and I want to build some muscle in the long term. If someone tells you that you can do these both at the same time, they're not lying to you. But if they tell you that you can do them at the same time in a way that is significant on both sides, they're misguided. Because in the end, you can drop body fat, yes. You can build muscle, yes. What we see is after maybe you get that like one round of it, in the long term, you actually are best suited to pursue one, then the other, or stack up multiple phases of one. If you care about that more, it's like you want to build muscle, get multiple phases of building muscle. Every once in a while, fat loss phase. Flip it. If you have fat loss that you have, or body fat you want to lose, fat loss phases, every once in a while, muscle building phase. Much more complicated than that. But what I want to talk about is how this all breaks down. Because in the end, NEAT, non-exercise activity, is actually your biggest source of calorie burn. So I spent all this time talking about training and fitness only to tell you that you're going to burn more calories by living your life than you will exercising. What? So here's the deal. Fat loss, you can see about 500 to 2,000 calories of calorie burn over the course of the day, depending on how you live your life, just living your life. That's not even just the basal metabolism that you have just to stay alive. This is activity outside of that. Muscle building, neat, is a good idea. Don't become a total sloth. When it comes down to fat loss here, here's the deal. Resistance training for muscle building and fat loss is key. Resistance training is key. Orange Theory, I'm not going to knock on it, but one of the big things is they lean on cardio and a form of cardio that does not really maximize these things I'm writing here. Martha, feel free to look at the PDF once it's sent out. So with resistance training, what does it do? Well, on the fat loss side, resistance training is not to burn calories. I'm just going to say that right now. Resistance training is not to burn calories. Feel free to panic, question, flip a table, whatever you want to do, because in the end, it's a losing proposition to try to lean on exercise, period, to burn calories. talk to anyone who has a lot of experience with body composition change and they will affirm this thought, because if you try to lean too heavily on exercise, your body will stop cooperating. It will experience too high of stress. Let me ask you this, which is more stressful, walking around as I am right now or going to a super high intensity class for an hour? The class, right? The class is much more intense. In the end, you're going to burn more calories in that hour, yes, but what we often see is a swing back in terms of your calorie burn the rest of the day. And usually the hangover is multiple hours beyond just that 1 hour. It's not like you're kind of tired-ish for like 10, 15 minutes. It usually is you moving around a lot less, missing out on a lot of calorie burn for quite a while. From there, resistance training helps you to maintain your muscle mass. It sends a signal to the body, let me keep this stuff, it's important to me. It helps you to maintain an optimal hormonal profile, because when you are trying to drop body fat, you're probably eating less food, you're being more active, and you're encountering more stress in the body, because stress sends a message. We want that stress. But hormones do change over time, especially if you play with your macros or micros or calories or food intake knowingly or unknowingly, and you do bring certain things too low in a way that you shouldn't. Resistance training allows you to keep or develop ability. If you just work on burning calories in a fat loss phase, that's great, but you'll find that it ends up getting kind of unsatisfying. It really is tough to enjoy your training and enjoy what you're doing if you don't have something that you're getting better at. If it's just about less is more, less is more, less is more, we usually see people flatline in terms of motivation. Keep up the morale. And resistance training represents a bonus calorie burn. It's great as a bonus, but that's not the point. It's really to help you keep your muscle mass, which keeps up your metabolism, and keeps up your strength, and keeps your hormones hot and heavy. So resistance training in terms of muscle building is great for building muscle mass, optimizing your hormonal profile, keeping and developing your ability, and keeping up your morale. That's actually what it really comes down to, folks. So how you do it, tons of ways you can do it for you. But in the end, for muscle building, cardio is optional, okay? Cardio is optional. Is it a good idea for your health? Yeah, I mean, it's not like a bad idea, but you really don't need to do more than like a day or two a week for a little bit. On the fat loss side, cardio is going to represent either a very short-term boost in calorie burn. Usually we don't recommend people lean on cardio for more than like 1 to 3 weeks, usually, if your goal is fat loss. If your goal is getting fitter from a cardio standpoint, great, that's part of training long-term. But in the end, cardio is also optional for fat loss. And in myself and multiple people, we found some of our best results from people doing zero cardio, which was blasphemous, but we decided to try it out and see what happened. Great results. Oh, and then food. Yeah, food matters, right? We're gonna get into food next time, but your food intake, if you're in a muscle building period, your food intake is a signal. It's a signal that you've got a surplus of food available, so let's build some more tissue. If you're reducing your food intake, it signals we're in a deficit. We don't have as much food on hand. Let's burn the stuff we've got stored. It's a signal, that's all it is. Questions on this slide? Okay. I'll be sticking around after if you want to ask. Okay, so here's the deal. When in doubt, we'll talk about body composition, and there's a lot of value for that from like a health standpoint, a well-being standpoint, a psychology standpoint, all this stuff. Aesthetic goals are fine, but in the end, please always have some type of component for ability. Something that resonates with you in terms of what you want to be able to do. We started with that, and we're going to start to wrap with that. Because in the end, it needs to be interesting for you, and it provides options for you to work on things. And if you walk out, I'll put it this way. If you say, Max, what is a really great exercise for burning body fat and burning calories? I'm going to tell you to go push a sled with a pretty large amount of weight on it in different ways for like an hour. And you'll be bored. You'll have like no skills. You will be stronger and fitter. But in the end, you might not actually walk out of that fat loss phase feeling like you took away a whole lot. And what we find is when people do it right, they will walk out with a lot of cool abilities, strength, and opportunities that they're like, I'm gonna go try breakdancing, because you can.
That's where I think what I went to,
Yeah. Great myth right there. Sweating does not necessarily translate to burning fat. If you sat in a sauna, your calorie, right? Yeah, you breathe out body fat. Exactly. So for those of you who are like, you're huffing and puffing, sometimes someone's working out, they don't want to be seen breathing heavily. Yeah, you're breathing out your body fat. Absolutely. All right. So from there, also have a longevity component. And when I say a longevity component, I mean something that you're thinking, this contributes to my quality of life. This makes me feel good. In the end, you tend to have better results. It's more sustainable. So in the end, please just feel as good as you look. The last thing you want to do is feel like you look awesome and you feel like crap. It happens. From there, When in doubt, seek guidance even a little. You all have either you're friends with me on Facebook at this point, or you have my email. You really can ask questions. I put an open door policy out. People don't like to touch open door policies, so I'm going to say it right now. Hit the send button. Okay, so with that said, find something that you enjoy in the work, whether it's the ritual, whether it's the social component, whether it's the activities you actually do, whether it is what it does for you. Find something that you enjoy in it, because if you don't, it is not the pursuit for you. If you're exercise averse, that's because you've been doing things that are not for you. So find something that resonates with you. Something is always better than nothing. Do something. So let's see where we're at for time here. We're going to go through a rapid fire one. So what I'd love to hear about, we're going to do a little sing along. We're going to build a system real quick. When you think about fitness, who here is like, you know, I could use a little help with my fitness for a moment. This is a vulnerable moment. All right, Tia, tell me about it. Are we going to talk about the running and the bears, or is something a little bit different here? Because we can.
I just haven't found anything that I like enough to stick with it.
Okay.
I have a workout room downstairs. I have a treadmill. I
Mhm.
love how I hate ellipticals.
Okay, so you have the elliptical, hate the elliptical. Wait, no,
Well,
you have a treadmill,
I
hate
have a
ellipticals.
treadmill, hate the elliptical.
Uh-huh.
I have it though.
Yeah.
And then I have a home gym.
Yeah.
Where you can do a whole bunch of things on it.
Got a
I
home
have
gym, all right?
Barbell and a bench.
And a barbell. So you have tools,
I have tools.
but maybe they're not resonating with you necessarily.
I did CrossFit for probably 2 years and I loved it. I
Okay.
don't know what I loved about it.
Loved
whether it was
CrossFit.
Social
Yeah.
or what, which is why I have the bench and the barbell.
Mhm. Okay. Is there anything in this? And this is definitely a bigger conversation, and we're gonna try to rip through it if we can. So it's based on your goals for starters. So are there any goals that you feel comfortable sharing with us that you're like, this is something that's compelling to me right now?
I just want longevity.
Longevity. Want to live forever. Okay, great.
Just feel better and
Yeah.
do things instead of, being my grandma who
Mhm.
can't move.
Okay. Feel better. Do things. Don't be the grandma who's rickety and falling apart. Okay. From there, CrossFit worked for you. Did anything else work for you in the past?
Well, I too lost 30 pounds last year.
Nice job.
That was
30-pound twinsies. This is great.
I did
Yeah.
keto.
Okay. Awesome.
Just that.
Are
I
you-
didn't do any workouts.
No workouts, just in keto. Are you still doing keto?
When Jordan brings in candy all the time, it's kind of hard.
Jordan is the saboteur in the office, right? Jordan's bringing in candy. That makes it hard. Okay. Understandable, Jordan. You've got to leave the office. It's been decided. That is the system. Okay. So from there, where we're at is for you, it's going to be a little bit more of an upstream process. So in terms of the systems, you guys, you can use this to walk through your own system building. But in your case, Tia, what it's going to come down to is identifying, if anything, I think a system for you would be starting with finding things and trying things. So that it might be as simple as like, hey, you know what? I'm going to, like somebody in the room, Eddie's over here, like, I love what I do for exercise. You're like, I'm going to take one. Yeah. Mhm. Right. Exactly. So maybe the social component for sure. CrossFit has a lot of novelty as well. If other people are also deciding for you generally what's going on before you come in. So there's variety. You can just show up. There's people. There's a whole bunch of stuff, and there's a place to go to where there's usually good energy in the room, right? I was a CrossFit coach for several years, and I think there's so many benefits to it. In the end, what I would probably do is where I think it would start. Your anchor is to find some time in your week to be like, what do I want exactly? Like what resonated with you, and then set up some things that you can do to actually go try. Because then from there, your measurement system might be like pros and cons list of like, how well did those go? Would I go back? Would I want to? And if you're saying, you know what, I've got this equipment, I want to use it, that's one thing. If it's, I've got this equipment and I have to use it, it's all good. There are a lot of people on Craigslist who want your equipment. So that said, sometimes people feel bound to use the gym because they have the membership. Some people feel bound to use their home setup because they have the setup and they invested in it and you moved your couch. But in the end, you can really make it your own. So what I would say, yeah, identify time for you. See, by the way, this is more of a discussion. I'm just like telling you stuff and I shouldn't be just telling you stuff. But in the end, for the sake of time, you would carve out some time to reflect on what you want from that, what appeals to you, some places you can try or things you can do if you want to go outside the home. Otherwise, you can start to coax people off the internet to come to your home to exercise with you. And yes, I had to say it that way. And then you can measure and determine how much should I like it? Give it a fun scale. And then maybe after a month, 2 to 4 weeks, you can decide if you want to proceed. Does that seem reasonable? Or you're like, that's too much. I'm probably just gonna, okay. All right, if it seems like it's too much, start with whatever feels more reasonable. Okay, y'all, we're in the home stretch. Best places for a system. You want to have some kind of system or process around how you determine why you're going to do something. Like, what am I chasing here? And that's just a goals conversation. So kind of like with Tia, it's like, well, what do you want? We'll start with that. And by the way, if you're saying, hey, I've got these goals, I would also encourage reflecting on like, what is sexy to you? Like longevity is good. I mean, like, I don't want to fall apart. Absolutely. But if you're like, I've got this vision of being a badass grandma who's like doing suplexes and wrestling people in the local, backyard wrestling league, fine. Then maybe that's something that resonates with you. I assume it does. So from there, we've got, a process of figuring out what are you going to do? Do you have a way of researching that? Do you have someone you can reference? Do you have a freaking like Instagram account who someone's got a program that you can try? You have my email, so you can ask me things. From there, process for determining how you're going to execute. Do you have a gym bag if you're going to go to the gym? Do you have to move things around just to set up your training space if you're at home? Do you have a food approach before or after? I don't know you guys, but having like a massive smoothie right before a workout or a really high intensity session is not usually a winning proposition for most people. So, what might I have? When might I have it? What does that look like? How does it fit in my day? How am I going to do it? When am I going to do it? My preferred backup schedules. Where am I going to do it? And who's involved, right? Because social support, as we said, so important. So in the end, get greedy, please. Ask more of your fitness, because if it's done properly, if it's the right fit for you, it will do these things. It will actually improve your ability based on your goals, your interests, and your needs. It'll help to expand your mobility and the usable range of motion that you have. If you have pain, it will help you to reduce or eliminate that pain. That is a true thing, if it is set up correctly for you. If you care about how you look, you will look, quote, good if that matters to you. And in the end, you're set up long-term to get to a point where you like where you're at and you can scale back to doing about 30% of the work to just maintain and live your life and enjoy the free hours in your week. So last thing, wake up, please, everybody. Wake up from the matrix. Wake up, wake up, wake up. Exercise is very important. It's very fun for some people, and it's very eye-catching. We think about fitness and we think, that is what I need to be doing. That is what results are all about. And all that said, it's just not as important as food and capacity sometimes. So I'm sorry, I literally just took you through like 90 minutes of why fitness is so great and what to do about it, only to tell you that it's not the most important thing. Oh, that's a bad cliffhanger. So here's the deal. It is super important. Like I said before, there are certain things you cannot achieve without tending to your fitness really intentionally. It's incredibly motivating. Usually we start people focusing on fitness and capacity in our programming because fitness resonates with people and we're willing to make moves there initially. When we talk about food next week, which is, Martha, potentially related to your question, or capacity, which also is likely related, changes can't happen without addressing food. Case in point, you go keto and like no exercise at all, you saw big changes. For some people, they'd be like, well, you know what, I don't really want to go keto, that's too hard. So I'm going to do something that's a little bit of a mix in between. In the end, all of it matters, right? It all matters, but you can't get the results you want for your health and your life, usually, if you don't also look at food capacity. So next time, we're going to the mind to mouth model. How you go from thinking about, planning, structuring, and getting food to you into your mouth in a way that is effective and supportive of your goals. It's not about good or bad food. You're not going to hear me say like, oh, this is healthy, that's a bad way to eat, this is junk food. I actually rarely use those terms because it's all about, is it helpful for you or is it not? If it's helpful, proceed. If it's not, adjust it. Take action, please, you guys. 48 hours, you'll forget 80% of this, and sometimes based on our review moments, more. And there's always opportunity to forget. Trust me, I've forgotten a lot more stuff than I know. In the end, I appreciate you all being here. Please send me questions. If you don't have my email, just ask me or whatever. If you're not friends with me on Facebook, I'm usually like pinging in and out of the KWIR thread. Robbie, thanks for being here. Martha, thanks for being here. Annie, thanks for being here. All of you, have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.